Hey guys, good evening. Thank you, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ice Talks. So today we're going to be touching up a very sensitive topic since every business is going online, which is security, and to be precise, information security. So we have a great panel of experts from Numetric. They would be assisting us to understand what is required for every business in today's world to take care of from data privacy's perspective, from information securing or connectivity laws, all of these things we're going to be talking about today. So let me just quickly go ahead and help you guys understand what the agenda or your key takeaways are going to be as viewers. So we're going to be understanding how security affects you and your business, immaterial of which size of a business you're, whether you're a startup, you just started up, your bootstrap, you're funded, your the expansion phase, wherever you are, how security affects you and your business. Next, we're going to be looking at how to become secure, achieve compliance, and provide assurance to clients and your customers. Because in today's world, data breach is something which happens almost every day, right? So let's see how we can prevent or try to make sure that our systems are robust enough to probably stay away from such breaches in the future. Next, we're going to be understanding all things that we've spoken about right now. There has to be a cost that is going to be involved, and we're going to debunk a few myths over here on how the cost is going to be a cost of implementing such a required security measures into your system, and we're going to be talking about what is involved for that as well. And after that, we're going to be understanding about the future of security as a business function itself. So let me just introduce you to the speakers of the day. So the very first one I'm going to introduce is Mr. Shailendra Singh. He is a principal consultant and cybersecurity expert with Numetric. He has worked with multiple projects on data privacy laws since 2010. So he has almost a decade of experience right now. So he currently holds multiple certifications in the cybersecurity domain, like CISSP, which is a very renowned and prestigious certification, CISM, CISA, and ISO 2000, 27001, 2013 as well. Hi, Mr. Shailendra. Please, if you could go ahead and say hi to the participants as well.
Hi, Pratish. Hi, everyone. It is good to be here. It is quite exciting, personally, to speak about this topic because security is becoming a big concern. Thank you, Pratish.
Thank you, Mr. Shailendra. Next, we have Ms. Janvi. Hi, Janvi. She is the co-founder and CEO of Numetric. So she is the woman on the top, right? So she has a lot of domain expertise in cybersecurity, and she also has a lot of experience in the manufacturing domain, in IoT systems, home interiors, business to business, and B2C sales as well. So I call upon Ms. Janvi so that you can say hi to the participants as well.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be conducting this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Janvi. So right now I call upon Mr. Divaspati Bhatt so that we can go ahead and start off with the session. So here we go. Let's begin.
Thank you, Pratish. Thanks for that wonderful introduction of panelist. Since the subject itself is no optional because of the importance of security, let's get into the subject straight away instead of getting into something else so that we can utilize our time more effectively. With that note, there are a couple of questions which came into our mind as well as which came from some of the people whom, when we have shared this as a subject topic for the week. The first question I'd like to ask, or I'll invite Janvi here, about what are the probabilities that a business will face a security breach? Normally, we'll be having a myths about it. Is it okay? जुगाड़ कर सकता है, नहीं कर सकता है? What's your, take on that? Pick on that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Indians are very famous for jugaad, right?
But, that's why I'm bringing that word.
Yeah, but I think in this aspect of when it comes to security, I think it's safer to avoid jugaad because there are no shortcuts and it's a long journey, right? So it's better to avoid shortcuts. I would like to share some statistics. So activity on darknet has increased by 300% in the last 3 years. Okay. Estimated annual revenue generated by cybercrime in 2019 was $1.5 trillion. A ransomware attack takes place every 11 seconds, is expected to take place every 11 seconds in 2021. Hackers attack every 39 seconds, that is like on an average 2,244 times a day. And 60% of the information on the dark web could potentially harm enterprises. And data of 200 GB size of data comprising scanned identity documents of Indians PII like voter ID, Aadhaar card, passport, PAN card, driving licenses are available on the darknet for sale. And these are statistics from the Kerala Cybercrime Division. So, given these stats, you can only imagine and understand that increasing percentage of crimes are shifting to the cyber world, and the frequency is also increasing. As mentioned in the statistics. So even the dark net, people are frequently visiting, and they are constantly accessing the dark net, right? So keeping all this in mind, what does it mean that this is a truly a borderless world? Okay, which means cyber laws are not able to catch up to these very quick advancements and changes to cyber hackers and tools and techniques used by attackers, and the laws are yet to become robust. And so it's not easy to get justice, or to recover lost data or your money. It is almost impossible as of now. Like if you go to a cybercrime police station and file a complaint, expecting that something will happen fruitful in your favor is quite unlikely right now. And this is also because law enforcement agencies have challenges of their own, legal and technical challenges, skill set challenges, skill force volume challenges, right, in order to catch these criminals. And mostly they are in some other part of the world where your own country laws are not applicable there. So huge coordination effort has to happen between different law enforcement agencies to catch these hackers. So their work is quite difficult. Okay. And ransomware products as tools are available for sale on darknet. So your competitors, disgruntled employees, anyone could easily harm your business if you don't have good security measures. And nation states also attack for it may be to destabilize your country, so you are not the focus but your economy is, or they're trying to finance their own secret experiments. So hacking and gaining money of small companies or large companies it's that is not their focus, right? The money making is their focus. So given all this, I would say the probability is quite high, and you can never say that you will never be hacked. It is an eventuality. It will happen. It's just how well you are prepared to handle the situation so that your customers, your stakeholders are happy and content that you have the intent, and therefore it is okay that you got breached, because I think breach is eventuality. It will happen.
Okay, wonderful. Definitely the data or the statistics what you're providing is very scary. And in today's world, it's ought to happen that everybody knows day in and day out. We are looking at newspapers or whatever the magazines or anything you look into it. There are cyber crimes, etc., related to maybe related to the money, or it may be related to data. Directly or indirectly, it is affecting the economy, no doubt about it. Now, just for the sake of our audience or this thing, ransomware. You talked about ransomware. Uh, what is the kind of impact if you look at it straight away, if you have to attach something or if you have to
So
give
just
something
to
as an
add on
example?
to the
Yeah, go, hold on.
just to add on to the sorry.
Go ahead, Pratish.
Yeah, sorry, Janvi. So there was a
No problem.
question from the audience. So basically, since you touched a little about ransomware, in 2016 or somewhere in mid 2015, 2016, there was a WannaCry attack that happened, and people were not really people sort of forgot about what ransomware was because it was not affected in such a huge scale. If you could give a little bit of a light on, how uh, so someone can try to stay or prevent their systems from being attacked by ransomware, or even how they can detect whether they have been attacked by ransomware.
So, Pratish, Janvi, I would like to take that question because, Pratish, I personally have had experience in dealing with WannaCry.
Okay.
So, sorry for interrupting, but this is something that is an
No, no, no,
interesting
no.
topic.
Go
So that's
ahead.
why
Go ahead.
So what? See, in my opinion, WannaCry was the game changer when it came to the focus on security worldwide, right? And it was an extremely unfortunate uh, thing that it succeeded, because what could have prevented that problem, the solution for that had already been released 2 months before actually it became a global threat. And unfortunately, organizations were lax in applying security processes that could have prevented them from becoming infected with that ransomware. And it had such a wide impact and such a major economic impact globally that that was the time when I noticed that organizations of all sizes, whether they're tiny or they are massive, they stood up and noticed that, okay, we cannot take security for granted. And incidentally, WannaCry, followed by the implementation of EU GDPR, are two critical events in the history of security focus among organizations that changed the world of security in general. Right now, the underlying reason why WannaCry succeeded as the first major ransomware, clearly there were ransomware attacks earlier as well, is because of the width and the depth of its impact on organizations. And I personally have seen an organization which was almost entirely down for 2 whole days. Now, if you are a major organization and you are down for 2 whole days, you can imagine the economic impact of it, right? Simultaneously, even smaller organizations that were affected by it, these were startups. And when you are a startup and you're down for 2 whole days, your clients notice you. Now, the impact is not so critical or serious in terms of business or money, but the impact that you see in such cases is on trust. Your clients, specifically if let's say you are a B2B client, they will notice that it is something that can bring down your operations to a standstill, and effectively they cannot rely on you. And in general, businesses work on trust. So to summarize, WannaCry was that it was a game changer when it came to security focus of organizations. Two, it is not that the situation has changed a lot. There are still a lot of organizations that do not take security seriously, and in fact, as Janvi already mentioned, ransomware attacks are on the rise. In fact, in the last year, by far among all of the various threat vectors that exist when it comes to security, ransomware was by far the most leading among all of those. And this is something that happens frequently. In fact, very recently, you all must have heard that for Telangana government, there was a ransomware attack which brought down part of their electrical grid, right? This is something that happens so frequently, and it is disappointing and kind of surprising for me that even after we see instances of this kind happening over and over again, organizations are not waking up to the fact that security is not optional anymore.
Wow.
Great, thank you for that, sir. So
Yep.
for the
Nice.
participants who are not sure what WannaCry or ransomware is, so basically if there is any sort of exploitation on the code that is available, hackers exploit that piece of code, exploit that gap, and then encrypt your files or any other ways of making sure that you do not have access to your own important files. And then they would ask you for money because they would hold the key to unlocking those files. So that is why, and ransomware was one if I give you an analogy, it was literally COVID for the data world.
I was tempted to say that, in
spread.
fact.
That was
Right.
the spread rate as well.
True,
So
true.
thanks.
Very
Over
true.
to you, Mr. Deosari. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it up, Pratish. And Shailendra, since you have taken up that, the next question is to you. Basically, it's like a follow-up question, which is addendum to what you answered just now.
Right.
What are the most important security areas that any new business should focus on? Because now we are talking about the new entrepreneurs or the bootstrap startups, etc., etc. If
Right.
keep that in mind, what are the focused areas?
So, see, any organization should take up security from a risk management point of view. See, when you start a business, no matter what domain or industry you belong to, it could be a software services company, it could be a software product company, it could be a manufacturing company. But in this world today that we live in, where digitization has got such a massive focus world over, all governments are insisting that digitization should happen. So, to take an example, for example, you must have read that now the intent of Indian government is that by next year, toll collection itself is not going to be based on cash. It has already shifted over to FASTag, and now it is going to be GPS based. Now, if you look at it from the point of view that is toll collection even a data driven business? Not really. It's after all a vehicle involved, a driver involved, and the NHI involved, right? But then you can imagine the amount of data that is being collected in the background. Now, the reason for giving this example was because at the end of it, no matter what domain or industry you belong to, you will be collecting data. Wherever data is collected, information security becomes a necessity. Now, given that, just as we have followed risk management principles for finance, which has a long history, probably decades, maybe centuries old history of managing risk related to financial instruments, the same principles effectively apply to security as well. And when it comes to risk management, it is a well-known concept that what you do is that you first of all identify what are the risks that are applicable to you. You identify as to what exactly should you be doing to reduce the applicable risk, and that in turn automatically ends up deciding for you that what should be your security focus areas, because every single activity that you take up comes at a cost, right? Now, having said that, uh, we normally in the business of security, what we do is that we classify the level of risk that is applicable to an organization, how important it is to focus on it today, and also identify as to how much cost it will be to mitigate that risk, to reduce that risk to an acceptable level. When you combine these two, automatically you end up getting a list of things that you have got to do. That is one way of identifying your focus areas. The other way of identifying your focus areas is you take up any information security standard. There are many of them, and you just look at what exactly the standard is asking from an organization, and then you prioritize based on again the same basic principles, that what is the probability that that risk is something that will happen to you as an organization, whether you are a B2C or a B2B or a manufacturing, it does not matter. And what would be the impact if that risk actually becomes a reality for you? Now, to give you a simple comparison, when you drive out at the beginning of the day, there is always a risk involved. The risk could be that you could end up in an accident, you could end up injuring someone else. Maybe in the accident you are not the victim, but someone else is. When you So effectively, it is not that because of this risk you end up stopping yourself from taking up that activity, because that is your need. Similarly, in the field of security, you have got to do what you have got to do, but you also know that okay, there are risks associated with doing it, and this is where you end up creating that list of security focus areas. Now, having said all of this, there are three main groups that organizations should focus on when it comes to mitigation of risk. First one I would classify as technical, risk mitigation. The second one would be process changes that you have got to implement, and the third would be training. When it comes to the first security focus areas, and see, the order that in which I am saying is not so relevant, because it will differ from organization to organization. So, for example, let's say your organization does not have a web or a mobile app, then in that case, uh, vulnerability assessments are something that are not applicable to you. So you will have to decide for yourself that which are the risks that apply to me, and then whether it becomes part of my security focus area or not, right? Having said that, So among the technical changes that you would want to make in your organization, one is that you should definitely be conducting vulnerability assessment. This is basically identifying where are the weaknesses in your application, the application that you are probably creating for your clients or customers, or it could be a web application, it could be a mobile application, it could be an API. In addition to that, then you would have your VPC network or your LAN network. So you need to conduct your vulnerability assessment, because hackers are constantly checking your system for these weaknesses, and if they find a loophole, they will attempt to exploit it. In parallel, if let's say you are a cloud-based SaaS organization developing software products, then source code review is something that you should be taking up. In addition to that, you should be conducting server hardening, and definitely among the things that you should take up is to train your developers on secure development principles, so that they know how to write code that is fundamentally secure, and it does not result into code that has got vulnerabilities which then are later caught in the vulnerability assessment activities, right? So these are the technical focus areas that you should have. The second thing that you should focus on are the process changes, because a lot of times the breach is due to, not due to flaws in your system, but because a human involved with that system has been exploited. And everyone must have heard the term social engineering or business email compromise, BEC as it is commonly
Yes.
called. These are things that are actually very easy to execute. And once upon a time, very commonly known was the Nigerian prince scam, which is where people would receive a mail saying that I have got so much of money to take out of my country and I would need your help, and at for a fee I'll do it, and people would lose money. Every single day now, the newer version of that is where people receive a call, they are asked to share their OTP, and the moment they share it, their money is siphoned off from their bank account. And this is something that does not happen to individual end customers alone or end users alone. It happens quite a lot to organizations as well, what we call as CEO attacks, meaning someone pretends to be the CEO of the same organization, sends a mail to someone, let's say from the finance department, and they take immediate action and transfer money out to some unknown entity, right? Assuming that it is the CEO that they are interacting with, and this happens with alarming frequency as well. So these kind of focus areas, I would group it as process changes. So among those, you should implement better access control. People should not have undue access to something that they do not have a business need for. You need to have better exit policy defined, so that whenever someone from an organization is leaving, all of their access is removed. Because if they leave, and let's say that they are a disgruntled employee who want to harm you, there are ample cases of this kind of a thing happening, where someone left and they were unhappy with the organization and they used their credentials, which were not disabled, to harm the organization. Not only that, they become lax with their own credentials, and someone else could get hold of those credentials and compromise your systems. Other than that, internal threats could be that someone makes a mistake, and because of that mistake, a change is pushed to, let's say, the production environment, which brings down the system. Recently, Citibank happened to face this kind of an issue, where $100 million worth of money was actually transferred to their lenders, which was not really supposed to be done. And effectively, the lenders eventually won in the court that they're not required to return it, even though Citibank tried to fight it. So these kind of change management processes should be implemented. Finally, you should have well-defined business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Here, the most important thing I say is that you need to have a tabletop simulation, where you imagine a kind of a negative scenario, and based on that scenario, what is it that you would do? You simulate that action, so that when it really does happen, you go ahead and execute it. And in this case, COVID has been the best example. Those companies that did not face any impact are the ones who had good business continuity and disaster recovery plans in place, where they had probably included this probability that what happens in case no one is able to turn up to office, right? Because overnight, everything shifted from office work to remote work. And there were organizations that struggled because they did not have any plan, and they had to scramble. To give you an example, let's say, organizations that were entirely dependent on desktop PCs, overnight they are not able to have their employees working, right? So business continuity and disaster recovery plans are is one of the aspects of process changes. And finally, and in my opinion, increasingly the most critical one is training. Organizations do not give enough focus on having an infosec education program for their people. Security is only as good as your security culture in the organization. If there is a small group of team that is responsible for security, but the rest of the organization is completely and happily unaware of what is security, sooner or later a breach is going to happen, because at the end of it, it is those people belonging to the organization who are not infosec are the ones who get compromised, right? So infosec education program is one of the most important training factors. While you are taking up that training, you should ensure that you train your teams, functional teams, not the infosec team, on the concepts of risk management and gap assessment. The idea here is that if they know that this is how it should be done, then in that case they will be better prepared to handle an infosec event before it
Yeah.
becomes a serious issue.
Wonderfully explained, Shailendra. I could able to make out two important points. One is de-risking, the another is disaster management, or having the system in place so that the loss or any kind of eventuality can be mitigated. That's what coming to my mind. Once again, coming back to you, Shailendra.
Yeah,
See, you spoke, just touched upon the standards there.
right.
Somewhere you mentioned about the standards. What are the standards, various standards for the data security? That's one. And how costly affairs these standards are if they have to implement or based on the need.
Okay. So, see, when it comes to standards is one word that you would actually use to group three different kinds of subgroups, as I can call them,
Okay.
of standards, as we like what I mean by that is there are actually like formally defined standards, right?
Mhm.
But then there are two other subgroups. One are what I call as frameworks. These are not formal standards, which means you will not get a certification on them, right? You are
Okay.
supposed to use this framework and self-certify. And then there are regulations,
Okay.
the most common being EU GDPR. Everyone knows that, right? So why to group these into these three categories is, first, for a standard, you can obtain a certification. There are certifying bodies who are authorized to sign off after auditing you and confirm to the whole wide world that as an organization you are someone who holds this certification. The real world equivalent could be an examination mark sheet, for example, right? So that is
Okay.
somewhat like a standard. A framework is what the general world example could be your self study. You study yourself and you take an assessment and then you will evaluate yourself, right?
Okay.
Whereas regulation is like the law. It is not like the law, it is literally the law, right? And going by each one of these, let me list down first of all what the various standards or frameworks or regulations are.
Yeah.
First one, and the most common and by far the most recommended for any organization that is starting off its security journey, is ISO 27001, which is an information security management standard, which is, in short, we summarize it as ISMS, right?
Hmm.
And if you are taking up the journey of information security or security management in an organization, then ISMS is a terminology that will become very common in your organization. That is I would say the best standard to choose, because it has been designed to be applicable to a wide range of organizations, which means that it is not something that applies to an organization only if they deal with information security or they are a data driven organization. Even a manufacturing organization can go ahead and have ISO 27001 standard, right?
Okay.
So this is by far the most common. But other than that, there are a lot of standards. Some of them are mandated to be applied. Now, this mandate could come from the government of of the country that you are working in or established in, or it could be a mandate of the domain or the industry itself, or it could be a mandate from your client. So some of them are like, for example, PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. It specifically applies to any organization that stores or processes or transmits card information. Now, when I say card information, historically it meant credit cards, but now there are debit cards, then there are loyalty points, all of these, like, what we call as currency,
Plastic money.
plastic money, right? All of those actually PCI DSS applies. And this is something that is not mandated by governments, it is not mandated by clients, it is mandated by the industry. So PCI DSS is actually a consortium of the card providers, which is all of the big banks, right? And they came together long time back thinking that, okay, card security is something that we need to worry about, because financial security is degrading, and if it becomes worse, then in that case people will lose faith in using credit card because they will be always afraid, right? So to avoid that, they came together and then defined this standard. So PCI DSS applies to credit cards and debit cards and similar financial instruments. Then there is SOC 2, which is, in my opinion, is quite similar to ISO 27001. I say similar, not identical, because there are some fundamental changes. Now, if you are an organization who's US focused, because SOC is something that is a predominantly US focused security standard, it is more of a security framework plus standard, right? And AICPA is the organization that is authorized to certify it. Then there are other standards which are actually built on top of ISO 27001. So for having these standards, to obtain the certification in this standard, you need to be first certified in ISO 27001. And they are, for example, if you want to be EU GDPR compliant, then in that case, you may want to choose ISO 27701, which is an add-on standard. You can get certified in it. And this is something that what we call as PIMS, Privacy Information Management System. It builds on top of the ISMS that you have built up. Then if, let's say, you are a cloud-based SaaS provider, maybe you would want to consider 27017, ISO 27017, which is meant specifically for cloud security. It has got clauses and controls specifically meant for cloud security, right? So these are the 5 most common standards as far as information security is concerned. There are several more which are kind of regional focus, but to begin with, ISO 27001 is the first one that any organization should be choosing. Now, those are standards. When it comes to frameworks and regulations, in my opinion, regulations is something that you should automatically gain your focus. Now, it is important to understand here, when it comes to standards and regulations, you have a choice of not being certified for a standard. Yeah. Even PCI DSS, even if it applies to you, even then you can choose to withhold the certification process for some amount of time. Maybe you have got cash flow constraints. Maybe it is something that will increase your workload so much that you will not be able to manage it practically. Whatever the reason, you can hold it off. This is not something you get as a choice when it comes to regulations. Regulations are the law. Organizations have to comply with it. Otherwise, there could be penalties, right? So having said that, the key regulations that apply to organizations depends a lot on the region and the country in which they are operating. But we all know the most common and the most famous is EU GDPR itself, the full form of it being European Union General Data Protection Regulation. It went live in 2018, and there was a lot of panic when it actually became a law. Sorry. Now, what I have seen is that EU GDPR is actually becoming the baseline standard based on which all of the countries are designing their data protection acts along the same line. So if let's say, for example, if you're an India-based organization, Indian Data Protection Act, which is still not an act, it is still a bill, it is yet to be passed, and it has been getting postponed since 2019. 2019 is when the first draft came out. Yeah. It is expected that this year it will be tabled in the parliament, and there is significant focus in our government, Indian government, where they are really trying to get it passed, because the cybersecurity situation is worsening so quickly, right? And if you make a comparison between Indian Data Protection Act and EU GDPR, you will see that except for one principle, almost all of the principles are identical to it. Okay. Similarly, all of the laws in the world, and I just used 2 examples which are applicable to 2 specific regions. The world over, all of the regulations are starting to reflect a similarity between them, right? Having said that, there are domain-specific or region-specific laws. So, for example, if you are US-based and specifically based in California, then if you're based in, for example, California, then the California CCPA applies to you. If you're a healthcare organization, then HIPAA applies to you. There are like countless regulations that apply to you. Every organization, as part of its information security activity, needs to evaluate what are the laws applicable to you. And please remember, there are historical laws that already will apply to you. So, for example, if you're an Indian entity, the IT Act 2008 will continue to apply to you, while Indian Data Protection Act will also apply to you. EU GDPR is something that is globally applicable. So if you have customers or clients who are based in the EU, you are supposed to comply with it, right? So these are regulations. Final group is frameworks. Frameworks, as I mentioned earlier, are something that you take up, you self-certify, and you be assured that you are compliant with the expectations of the framework. Now, we can say that frameworks are like a grouping of the best practices in information security, right? And I'll not get into the details of it because it will become probably too technical,
Yeah.
but I'll quickly mention the names of it. So the most common framework that any organization can use is what we call as CSA Star. It is from Cloud Security Alliance. It is a framework that actually is an amalgamation of these various standards and regulations. In fact, if you check their checklist, review it, you will get to see that it is very beautifully done, where all of these standards, all of the relevant regulations, they have been combined, and a singular checklist has been created against which an organization can evaluate itself, right? Similarly, there are subdomain specific frameworks. When I say subdomain, it means that there are frameworks that could apply, that you can apply to only your development environment, or there are frameworks that you could apply to improve your VPC network, or there is framework that you could apply to improve your process changes. And some of them are like, for example, SAM. SAM is SAMM, which is software assurance maturity model. It is useful for improving the way you write your software. Or there are CIS benchmarks, which is Center for Internet Security, which is used for improving your VPC. Then there is NIST, National Institutes of Standards and Technology. They have got these special publications, and they release various best practices that can be followed to improve your processes. Right?
Wonderful.
So these are the various groups, standards, frameworks, and regulations.
Yeah, basically, I understand. It's beautifully explained with three steps actually: the standards, frameworks, as well as the bylaws or the compliance itself, regulatory way of putting it across.
Right.
Anyway, wonderful way of explaining. A lot of inputs has been given within that short stint. Thanks for that, Shailendra. I'll go back to Janvi now with the same question. Even after explaining so many things, see, we always get into, okay, is it really so serious? Can I take that option, the data security as an option for my industry? That's the question number one for you. I want you to explain me in a very layman's language, I can say. And can a business afford to postpone it? Even though I know that as a business owner, I may not be, but for the benefit of everybody, I think that input or insight will help them to take it seriously and take at least one step. Then, the purpose of this talk is done. Otherwise, we'll be giving them the GAN and they are not taking any action. then this is just only a GAN for us. That is not the purpose of these dialogues or talks. It's they have to take one step ahead now after this, hearing this. That's why I'm asking this question. Is it an optional one, or can I postpone it for some time? That's the question I'd like to pose.
So you asked, you want an answer in layman terms. So in layman terms is, no, it is not optional anymore. Yeah. Okay? Not anymore. Especially since 2 years and now since COVID. And not because of COVID, but because all work also has shifted to remote, and we can see that everything doing digitally, doing remotely is a possibility, and this is very convenient for a lot of people, right? Yeah. So, and also the way cybersecurity domain has matured, straightforward, it's not optional anymore. Now, security reasons were already shared earlier by me when I gave the statistics of how frequently threats are happening, how much business happens on the dark web because of malicious activities. $1.5 trillion every 11 seconds a ransomware attack is expected to happen, etc. So they are the security reasons that I mentioned to indicate the volume of threat that is out there. Yeah. And which means without strong and high walls, a breach is imminent. And because you're not prepared, you do not know how to handle a breach. Okay. So that is security reasons that you cannot afford to postpone it. I'll give you a few more business reasons. See, when you're a B2C organization, a startup or an established organization, your customers will be heavily disappointed and irritated if there is a breach and you did not handle it well. So that will lead to loss of your reputation and customers, which means that once you lose such customers, there's a loss of trust. It's very difficult to gain back your end user customers, right? So, like we experienced with that, with the WhatsApp's privacy changes, policy changes, there was huge backlash. We hadn't heard of the platform names. All those gained popularity, they grew in business, etc. So, end users are now aware and they are concerned about their privacy and security of the data that they're sharing. And once they lose trust in you, it's very difficult to gain them back. Second, B2B organization, focused organizations, the growth depends on assuring the big enterprise clients you're targeting or prospects you're targeting that your security is in order, okay, is in place, so that they are convinced and they're comfortable using your products and services. And this is primarily because enterprises are compliant to the standards, some of the standards Shailendra mentioned, ISO 27001 or PCI DSS or SOC 2, which mandate these enterprises to have vendors who are compliant. So the equation is very simple. If you want big clients, you have to be a vendor that is compliant. Otherwise, you do not become the vendor of their choice. Okay.
Agreed.
Then the third reason I can give you is these customers, the enterprise customers, because they're very huge, they may demand n number of security measures to be put in place. Now, security is a journey, a long journey, and it is expensive. So, as a young organization, you're not expected to have made that kind of investment in time, money, and effort. But if you have your own security roadmap, you're not required to deviate from it for every different customer. You can stand your ground and you can say, I have a very holistic security roadmap. I'm going to stick by this time, and you can assure them of your intent of security, which is what they are looking for. They are not looking that you be certified in this and that. What they want is assurance from you. So if you have a plan, you can always negotiate and convince them and not lose the deal. And your competitors, if they are compliant and you are not, you straight away stand to lose ground. So a lot of our customers, prospects say that without this being in place, I'm not going to get considered for even shortlisting. Forget being shortlisted, right? They're not even going to consider for first review. Okay.
This may be one of the parameters, you mean to say that?
Yes. So if you're not certified, if you can't prove compliance, I'm not going to discuss anything further with you. That is it stops there. The buck stops there. Now, and security, like I was saying earlier, is a journey of around 3+ years, 3 years and onwards. And it's very highly planned activity. You don't do it ad hoc and in bits and pieces. Okay. Yeah. So it cannot be achieved in the short term. So your business, you're setting up a business, keeping long term in mind. You want to have this continuing entity. So you do things that are necessary for its long term survival, not today and tomorrow. You think of the future. Okay. Wonderful. And when it comes to very sensitive PII data, only those organizations maybe with not very sensitive PII data, they're not collecting it. They may do some basic security measures like vulnerability assessment, define the ISMS policies, and take up advanced measures like a certification or a compliance later. But at least some basic thing, they should do it now. That at least cannot be postponed. And finally, also increasingly, it is observed that investors, while having the funding discussions, look at the aspect of how much you've invested or done in terms of security, because they want to reduce the risk of their investment in you. So if you seek money from them to set up your security, basically you will end up giving more stake, which in future has more value. So if you have already invested time and effort, it's not just a money effort investment, it is a time and effort also. Your involvement is also needed as an enterprise, as a business in managing security. So if you've invested that today, in your funding or in while talking to your investors, you could end up not having to give up additional stake for additional money, which will benefit you in the long run and manifold for you, benefit for you later.
Yeah.
So for growth, you need product, you need good product or service, and you need revenues, consistent revenues. And thirdly, I would say you need good security measures to be in place. This combination means you are ready for growth. So anyone will be interested to either buy your services or invest in you.
Yeah.
So, and this is where Numetric helps. You can come on board. We'll come on board as your security team. You can outsource the entire vertical to us. We understand your business aspects, the security aspects, what is needed to you. We recommend the right solutions, and we also implement and manage it on the long term. So this is also something where we help. Right.
Wonderful.
So I think that answers.
Thank you so much. It exactly gives me the answer. In the era where the customers are becoming more and more aware and the hackers are becoming more intelligent, in between the entrepreneur has to have the option of protecting his interest as well as his customer's interest. That is where this data security will become more and more important, as well as you rightly mentioned, it's no more an optional one. It has to be. It's just becoming kind of necessity rather than luxury in today's world.
Yes.
Or
The hygiene factor, you can say.
Hygiene factor. It's not a certificate on the wall. It has to be implemented and take care of your client. So that way, I think we are all convinced about it. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful one, and wonderful thing. One more thing here is, on the right time, we are in collaboration with you. Okay, the Isuno as well as the Numetrics in collaboration now. We are happy to collaborate with you, as well as to announce that. Anyway, it has announced earlier days, and as a platform, yes, we are happy about your partnership with us and look forward to see you all. And any queries, now we will get into a Q&A. If anybody
Devaspati sir, I want to say that yes, it's a pleasure for us to be associated with Isuno, and it's a wonderful team. It's very enriching, always engaging. So look forward to doing more help to startups together. I think with Isuno and Numetric.
That's the whole purpose of it. That's the whole objective, is to help the startups or help the entrepreneurs. Under one umbrella, they should be able to protect everything. That's the whole objective of it. We are happy, as well as we are looking forward to have more talks and more information and more collaborations like this. Thank you very much. Now we will open it up. If anybody has got a question, let us take it quickly. Thanks both of you, and we are on time almost. Okay, we have taken 45 minutes to be precise in answering. If any other want to clarify something, this is the time.
Yeah. At the same time, we are rejoicing the happy association with Numetric. I would like to ask two questions to Shailendra about today's topic. One is like, Shailendra, you explained about the checklist that typically one has to go through for a web application or some cloud application that they build up, right? So, do you help startups or founders to identify this kind of checklist, sit with them, and then actually get them some kind of assurance like this checklist is ready? This is the checklist for your application. Please go through this and try to make it happen.
Yes. So let me answer that slightly differently from how you were intending to ask, because the intent here is that an organization should be able to take up security on their own, alongside also obtaining external help. Security is not rocket science. Okay, so let me clarify that. What is the concern that I personally would have is the fact that we deprioritize it to an unreasonable level. But having said that, it is laborious, time consuming, sometimes also difficult to implement the individual aspects. But overall, if you look at security, it is not something as building an application. In my opinion, tech team actually is much more expert when it is compared to us. And the reason for that is because security is very common sense driven. Okay, it does not require like financial knowledge or legal knowledge. I'm not saying that, we're not experts, because if you go into the details of standards and regulations, it is really an in-depth domain. That's why you need years of experience to become a security expert, which is something that you may not need for other domains, right? But having said that, the outcome, the framework, the standards, the regulations that have been designed have been designed in a manner that makes it easy for even non-infosec people to implement it, right? Now, coming to your question specifically, given this context that I explained, uh, an organization can take up the checklist approach on itself. In fact, even we do the same thing. The way we do it probably would be slightly more better, simply because of the fact that we come from the domain, right? But having said that, it is not impossible for an organization to take it up itself. Now, let me take an example of PCI DSS. By far, the most stringent, the most difficult standard an organization needs to comply with is PCI DSS, because there is no concept of random sampling. It has to be, everything has to be checked, and everything has to be proven that you have implemented. The PCI DSS security checklist, what is called as SAQD, self-assessment questionnaire version D, is public. PCI DSS has released it on the internet. So which means any organization, if it is building a SaaS product that is meant for the financial domain, will save credit card information. They can go to PCI Council website, download it, and start filling it up. Yes, they may require help to interpret what is written in there, but it is not impossible for them to figure it out themselves. A little bit of, yes, they will have to take that effort of reading up on the internet what each of the controls mean. And when I say control is nothing but something that you are supposed to implement to improve the security for that particular subject matter, right? So an organization can take it up on itself. Where experts like us come into the picture is the organized way of doing it, because we have undergone this cycle so many times. We know what is the most efficient, effective, least cost approach that we can take, an organization take. That is one benefit that an external firm brings in, right, which is expert in security. The other benefit that an external firm brings in is actually, in my opinion, the more valuable thing, which is what not to do. When it comes to security, it is not only a matter of what are the things that you need to do, you also need to know what are the things you should not be doing. Maybe the need is because you do not have that surface area. Your application, let's say you do not have a mobile application. Why will you even consider checklists related to improving your mobile application? Now, the security standard is universal, so it will have everything in it. Now, to figure out that, okay, this is applicable or not, is something that non-infosec people will find it difficult to do it. So it is about, the external firm will follow the same approach that an organization would do it. And in fact, whether organization is doing it or we do it, both will be called as a gap assessment, right? That is one benefit that a consulting firm would bring in. The other aspect is whether you are doing it by yourself or whether you are getting it done through external help. Build a roadmap, project that by this month, this week, what do I want to achieve? Prepare a list of things, prioritize, order them in highest to lowest priority, set a time, set who's responsible. It becomes a simple project management activity. And which organization does not know project management? Everyone knows it, right? The expert help may be required, but an organization is entirely capable of doing it itself if they are really intent on it. If they want to do it faster, more efficiently, and in less expense, then it is better to get external help.
Wonderful.
The checklist I was referring to was like what not to do.
Yes, what not to do. Yes, it does matter. A lot of organizations I see struggle with, they get, their mind is boggled by the long checklist. So just to give you some statistics, ISO has got 116 clauses, 114 controls, 230 things. PCI has got 329. SOC is something that is an undefined thing, so there is no end to it, right? So any organization can get bogged down by, oh wow, this is what I've got to do, I cannot do it myself, right?
Wonderful. Thanks, Shailendra, for that. Now I would like to ask one question to Janvi. Janvi, I also see there's a lot of rise of kind of code anywhere, code do anything kind of platforms. More from Google, more from Microsoft, more from Amazon, more from a lot of these players are Adobe. All of these players are coming up and sharing this more as a subscribe to a platform and build your applications. So in this kind of world, which is tomorrow, like everyone will be able to start build applications. How do you see the security would be looked at?
So what happens is, in this scenario, I think Shailendra also can add or maybe correct me. Is it now becomes responsibility of? I mean, it's not just the Google and Amazons that are offering this. I've come across many others are now starting to offer this as a platform itself. So it becomes the responsibility of this platform provider, because once the code is built, it is getting constantly evolving in their environment. So it is still the platform provider's responsibility to manage everything related to security for that product. Okay. And on the other side, the enterprise or the organization that's using this platform to develop it cannot wash their hands of saying, I'm using a platform and it is their responsibility, so I'm not going to be held accountable. Ultimately, your user is coming to you and not to the platform builder, service provider, to get their product or end outcome, right? So you will still need to work with that platform provider and ensure that if you're developing a financial product, for example, and the data that is getting stored is PII sensitive, cardholder information sensitive, then is there a need for that organization to have various certifications or standards? Is that going to impact your business? Because then you will end up saying that the platform where I've gotten it developed, they are compliant, hence I am also compliant. And invariably, these could apply to you also, because although data or product is residing elsewhere, your tech team is still, or your IT team is still accessing that same information, because you will obviously constantly keep seeing what is happening. So it does not rule out the responsibility on you. In fact, it is even more difficult because now it is outside your control. They can say a couple of things, and you may not, because you're a small organization, they could be a larger organization, you may not be able to exactly also get what you want in terms of security.
Yeah.
So I would like to add something to that. This is a common misconception I have seen, and I'll come to your point of no code development. This is a what do we say, the next level of threat that is coming up, applicable, from a security point of view. I'll explain why. But before we get to that, this is a common misconception I have seen, that that a startup is building something. It is using one of the most common hosting providers, either it is AWS or it is Google Cloud Platform or Azure. By far, these are the three leading ones, right? And there is an implied assumption that there is security implemented by them. They are certified. So whatever I build on top of that, that is secure. It is by far the most worst thing that I have seen, because the surprising part is this, that see, first of all, if you look at their shared responsibility matrix, which is they are giving you the infrastructure, they're giving you the platform, you are building something on top of that. The shared responsibility matrix clearly says that they are responsible for the security of the infrastructure. They are not responsible for security of your platform that you, or application that you built on top of that. So I find this misconception troublesome, because looking from a common sense point of view, why would they be, or how would they even improve security for your application? It is entirely built
I think
by
they
you.
clearly state it in their contracts, etc., that
Exactly.
we are limited responsible. You have to take care because you are allowing direct access to your platform through us. We cannot at all ensure. In fact, how you set it up is up to you,
Right.
and it's very clearly written. So I think maybe the misconception is because it's not read through. It's fine print, may not have been understood.
So yeah, so reading the contract actually becomes an important thing, right? And this misconception has to go away. If you are a startup, you're building in AWS or GCP or Azure, security of your application is your responsibility. Let that be known worldwide. I hope so, because this is becoming by far one of the biggest reason why actually new startups are insecure in their application, because they think that AWS will take care of their security.
Exactly.
Not the case at all. Now coming to the no code, this is the next thread that is coming. Having said that, it is a brilliant thing. When I first became exposed to the no code thing, and another term came up along with it, what is called a citizen developer. meaning you do not even need to be a developer to
Developer.
really build an application, right? And so many platforms are coming up. It is becoming the next aggressive competition among the major platform providers. That
Yeah.
we build a system on top of which, using the tools that we provide, people are able to build it. Now, let's go back a little. There was a time when blogging meant that you had to actually create your website from scratch. Then came WordPress, and it changed the game, right? And now you have so many other. Wix is there, Squarespace is there. You do not even need to know details like how to manage things in WordPress, and any lay person can go and do it. Brilliant thing. Same thing is happening with no code. The problem that comes up is this. See, just because you are building on top of an existing platform, the security of your application is still your responsibility. The platform can only do so much. And because you're not from that background, you're more likely to not be aware of best practices. So if you are a citizen developer, you are building a code using a no code platform, please take the time to figure out what are the best practices for security, just as you do for best practices for your best, like the algorithm itself that you build, right? So this is the one single line advice that I would like to give. But it is a brilliant thing in my opinion, citizen developers.
Wonderful. Because
Nice.
the momentum, just 1 minute, Mr.
Yeah.
Because the momentum is so aggressive, as you rightly said, it is going to split the world in three parts. One is low code, no code, and code. So
Yes.
either you code or you do low code or you
Yes.
don't ever code. So this
Yes.
is the new reality or new normal that is that is what all these Googles and Microsoft and Amazons are driving aggressively on.
True.
And this is the
Very
world
true.
we are going to live in very,
Very
very
true.
soon.
True.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the share.
Quickly, I think Pratish, you have got a question. Quickly post it because we have already 7 minutes. If anything specific,
sir.
we can always discuss separately.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead,
So,
Pratish.
very quickly, I just wanted our startups, ICE Accelerator startups, to sort of have an understanding. What does this collaboration bring to them from Numetric? What are the services? If you could give us a small idea, what they could reach out to you for, that would be great.
Sure. That's a great question. What we look forward to is maybe some initial, queries they want to bounce off. They're having a client audit. They want to know how to respond to it, and they want to bounce it off us. You could always reach out to Numetric, and of course, we are going to have such sessions. If you want more details, you want to understand more details, please reach out also. And ultimately, what we are aiming to do, our vision with Numetric is to help startups with their security journey. So if you think you need help in terms of collaboration directly with you, please contact us, and we will figure out, like I said, what is the kind of help you need. We'll advise you the right what to do, what not to do. I think we discussed that. And help you with your starting your journey if you've not started, and also help you continue it for a few years. You can outsource the entire department to us if say, and we'll sort of manage everything. You focus on your product, you focus on sales and marketing, you focus on other aspects. We'll take care of security for you. So I think that's what can be achieved through this collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. Anirudh, you can raise that question, unmute yourself and ask if you are really,
Okay.
go ahead.
I use SolidWorks. SolidWorks is almost an 8 lakh software. I cannot afford 8 lakhs as of now. So if I use a pirated version, is that going to be a...
Yeah, you're gone on mute, Anirudh. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So that's about it. I mean, I just want to know if there is anything at stake. Is my data viewable by the actual person who's hosting the license?
Okay. All right. First thing is that let me address this question. This is something that comes up frequently when we do our gap assessment, and specifically regulatory compliance becomes a focus area, right? So, if you have a cost challenge, see, there are some alternatives available. First of all, you should attempt to find out whether there are alternatives available that are open source. For every commercial software now, you'll almost always find something that is open source. That's one way of looking at it. But let's say that you do not have that option. Then the very first question, uh, compliance with the law, right? When it comes to law, the law of the land, which is wherever you are functioning as an organization, you need to comply with it. Now, no law appreciates it. There may not be a defined law that says that you're not supposed to use pirated software, but that does not mean that if it comes to the notice of the regulatory authorities, they will be appreciative about it, right? So compliance with the law is something that is not an option. So from that point of view, if let's say you are using a software which is necessary for your business function, the way your business model should be defined is that you need to pass on that cost to your clients. Now, let us take an example from the security domain. This is applicable to us as well. We use various tools that are necessary for vulnerability assessments, right? The most common being Burp Suite Professional. Burp Suite Professional is a paid software, meaning there is a community edition also, which is free to use, and there is no piracy or something required, but it does not have all of the features that we need. Or for that matter, we use something like Qualys for scanning the VPC environment. When it comes to the cost that we have to bear to use these tools, it is factored into the cost that any of our clients will have to bear if they have to obtain that service from us, right? And the idea being simple: forget the regulatory part. The problem with pirated software is this: can you really trust who has cracked that software? Can you be 100% sure that they have not injected it with code, that whatever data is flowing through it is not being sent to their command and control center, CNC as it is called? You can never be sure about that. So other than the regulatory risk, imagine the data risk that you are subscribing yourself to, and this you are doing by choice. I strongly recommend that you just factor in the price of the purchase software and then increase the price for your clients. And if your clients cannot afford it, then in that case, maybe the business model itself is something that you need to reconsider. But I strongly recommend that you depart from this current way of doing it.
We don't have any clients as of yet. I mean, we are into product development. We do our own product development, and I think most of the factories and places which are currently in Kenya also, everyone uses only a pirated software. So none of us actually give so much importance for it unless there is a big raid or something like that. You become a very big company.
Yeah, so okay, I get your point. See, I will answer it in short, because then this is a longer discussion which needs to be outside the scope of this call. But one straight thing that I would like to point out is, look at the theme of this session itself. Is security optional? And in fact, complying to regulations is part of security, right? It is not optional anymore. Yes, you may be facing business problems, but you need to find business solutions to it. This is an illegal way of doing it. And being legal is very critical to your business. If not today, tomorrow, if you want to get funded and you go ahead and disclose this, you can say bye-bye to your funding, right? Maybe harsh to you today, but the fact is that this is the ground reality. Now, having said that, maybe we should talk the rest of it.
I think if Anirudh wants to discuss more, he can contact us. And this is what I was saying earlier. You want to bounce off such queries, have a discussion. Yes. That is what this collaboration.
Anirudh, what I suggest is reach out to Isuno team interns. We'll be able to connect with Numetrics because they are our partners. And we'll be able to support you in this respect. And as rightly mentioned by Shailendra, there are options available. When there are better choices available with you, why you should not exercise? Right. Why you blindly follow others? Everybody is using pirated. Yes. Why can't I?
Yes.
Then we are in danger.
No, and I think I would like to say that those are security reasons, the legal, illegal aspect, security aspect. But even from a business point of view, see, a lot of clients, big customers, start sending audits to you where they will ask, what kind of software is it, prove that it's licensed version or pirated version. I mean, of course, they won't even ask you if it's a pirated version. So your answer to those, if there are no, it's very difficult to assure. How will you assure, right? Your large enterprise, like when you're targeting the big one. And that is something I was saying earlier, these kind of audits Numetric helps with. we go through what the client has asked for specifically, audit the questionnaire itself and help you answer it. But if practices are like this, then difficult even, to say no, and, not telling truth or masking it is not an option that we would recommend or we would agree to. So it's a dicey, you'll have to, please, we'll connect offline and
Yeah,
further.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I hope if any other questions are there, Ravi sir, do you have anything?
Yes, sir. I
or,
have one. It is
yeah, I could able
to
to see
both
on
the
your face.
panelists. Are you guys
Yeah.
able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Clearly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good to you.
Janvi and Shailendra, both of you. Basically, today, with the digital transformation happening over B2B, B2C, everywhere. So I'm more concerned from the B2C angle. When coming to the customer side, most of the customers today have n number of mobile apps on their.
Right.
Oh. No, you went on mute, Ravi sir.
No, he's not on mute.
Not on mute, but at the same
on
time,
mute,
there is some
but-
problem.
Yeah.
We are not
We
able to
lost your
hear you,
voice.
sir. Just check the headphone, earphone.
No.
Connection. Yeah. There is a loose connection, it looks like. No.
So would you like to type the question out or maybe try unplugging your earpiece and put it on
Yes.
speaker? Maybe
Yes.
that will be more, will remove the loose connection.
Ravi sir, can you type the question on the chat?
Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah, now it's
Now we hear
Yeah,
you.
go
Now
ahead.
we hear you.
Yeah. Basically, see, in regards to WhatsApp and any of the payment applications which are there on your mobile phone, I'm purely talking from the customer angle. As a customer, what are the don'ts which the customer needs to follow in this case when there are many mobile apps which are used for fintech, non-fintech apps which are available in the market and people are using it? What are the don'ts which the customer needs to follow? Is there a
So Janvi, I'll take up that. See,
Sure, go ahead.
when it comes to mobile apps, the first thing that let me be free to answer from a do's and don'ts, right? So maybe if we talk about the do's, we come to know what are the don'ts, right? One of the biggest flaws that I've seen in the logic of people following the practices of installing mobile apps is they will go ahead and install massive number of apps. First of all, why do we need so many apps, right? Or maybe an app was necessary in a point in time and now it is not required anymore, but we keep it. There are multiple reasons. Mobile apps, the storage cost has gone down so much, so we can have like countless apps, right? That is one. Second that I've seen is, and the most frequent, by far the most frequent reason why retail or like end users compromises happen, which is wallpaper apps, flashlight apps, these random apps, right? And the beautiful thing about the evolution of the platforms, I'm talking of Android and iOS, has been that they themselves have become more secure over time, and they are now offering newer features that allow us to control the permissions that we give to the apps. But at a fundamental level, it's it's again back to common sense, and this is the word I've used many times in this session. When you are installing, let's say, a wallpaper app, and the wallpaper app is asking for permission to your contact list, why does a wallpaper need access to your contact list, right? And these permissions show up, like it will give you the list that these are the permissions being asked.
Yes.
The next issue is this: we have gotten habituated to clicking accept. We need to change that and say deny. No, I do
No,
not
but
want
that's,
it. No, thanks.
I wouldn't blame it on an end user because, see, the way it's designed is to want you to click, the where you will click, that is where the okay or the accept is. So, how the way the
not
brain
entirely
functions,
true.
that's how
It used to
is.
be true until recent times, but now laws, EU GDPR, India, even the Indian Data Protection Bill clearly says that you should not design an application or the interface in such a manner. In fact, there is a new term that is coming up, what is called as dark patterns. Dark patterns are exactly the thing that Janvi pointed out, that the interface is designed in such a manner that it actually coerces you to take action which is against your interests.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it is inducing you. So
So
I
law
wouldn't
is
blame
changing.
the
The
end
law
user, you have to
itself is
consciously
saying,
design it. Yes.
so the law itself is saying that no more dark patterns, right? So these kind of things are expected to go away, but that cannot, these laws and regulations cannot overcome human behaviors, common sense. Why does a flashlight app, for example, need access to your contact list?
Contact list.
It happens, in my phone, it happens. The calculator and the calculator will ask me permission to for my contact list. What has the calculator got to do with it? Right? And it
No,
keeps
and
on pestering
not
me.
just contact list, even your GPS location. Many apps.
Yeah,
they
so
want
I
to
gave
track
just
you
one example,
wherever
right?
you are. Yeah.
So contact
Yeah.
list, your location, your storage. For example, flashlight will only shine a light. Why does it need access to your SD card? Simple reason is because they're going to read it and then transfer that data, right? So one of the most common things that I do is that for any application that does not need internet access after installation on your phone, disable its connectivity. Almost like Android and iOS both, they allow you to individually disable it to connect to the internet, meaning no Wi-Fi, no mobile. Effectively speaking, even if there is something malicious in it, it will not be able to communicate out, right? So this is one thing, like again, a common sense thing. First of all, habituate yourself to start to click no, I'm not going to permit it. Like, and trust me, 95% of the time the application will work just as it was designed. We have this fear that if we say no, it will not work.
Yeah.
It will work. Try it out and see. If it does not work, it will keep on pestering you, then go ahead and accept it. So that is one. Second, uninstall an app. Why do you, regularly, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, just go and check what are the apps that you have used 100 days back and just go ahead and delete them. Nowadays, in fact, if most app like the Android and the
Mobiles are
iOS
having
themselves,
that app.
yes, they have that feature inbuilt. You do not even need to install something externally. They will tell you that, So, I do not understand, why people do not just use common sense. It is unfortunate because
I think
at the end
I
of it,
want to
they pay
add-
the price.
I have to add that, I mean, they pay the price. So that's also because I think people are a little lazy. Everything has to be at the snap of a finger, and you want everything to move very fast. So it's okay. Go a little slow when you have a new app or you're checking your phone and apps and its permissions. Spend a few minutes. Of course, it's going to take a few minutes, but your few minutes today is going to save a lot of. Phones are getting hacked nowadays, right? Like a lot.
True.
And just for anyone, right? So spend a few minutes. It's just a habit. Check what permissions you don't understand it. Try to read up on it. Decide what to need to do. And like Shailendra said, deny it. What you think logically not necessary for that app to be provided, and you see, if it's still demanding it, that means maybe you need to look for an alternative app. For example, why would it otherwise ask for free data, right? So there's nothing free. Especially with free apps and free platforms, there's nothing free. They're accessing your data and they're selling it, or they're analyzing it. With that analysis, they're doing something else and having their revenues, monetizing it. So nothing actually is free. So don't get sort of misguided by free apps and free solutions.
It's also because of the illiteracy of the users.
Yes.
Illiteracy in the sense, I'm not saying they don't know the ABCDs of it, but only the people are not, because they are not understanding the importance of IT, and they just, because they can buy and afford a phone, they just buy it.
That's also there, yes.
Yeah, that is the illiteracy which I'm talking about.
Yes.
So just to add to that, when it comes to an organization does not have a choice. It has to implement what is called as an MDM, mobile device management policy. What these policies do is simple. They will segregate your employees' data into a sandbox environment within the devices. And now every company allows employee devices to be connecting to their network, right? There's no choice anymore. It has to be done. So MDM must be implemented. As a B2B organization, there is no option here. Implement the MDM. It will trouble your people because there will be restrictions set to the data that is belonging to the organization, not to the rest of the device, right? And these MDMs available both for Android and iOS are extremely well designed, and they kind of work well. So please implement an MDM is what I would say.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for the details.
Thank you so much. And it was wonderful interaction with you, Janvi and Shailendra. And we appreciate the information shared by you. And I hope this information will go to various clients and customers and the startups. And they will come back to us, and in turn, we will be able to refer them to you. That's one. And the whole purpose objective is to give them some input about data security and where we are going right or wrong. You see, we are good in becoming a Google doctors right now. For everything, we will search and we will get some solution, and we are quickly picking it and go ahead. Okay, ho gaya mera kaam aaj ka. Then
Right.
that may not work for a very long when it comes to data security. So that is where we need to come to the experts like you and anybody for that matter. That's always a better way available, better options and choices available with us as an entrepreneur. Because one of the characteristics of the entrepreneur is creating more choices for himself.
Correct.
So keeping that in mind, I think I would like to conclude the session today. Even though we have crossed our time and this thing, we got so many input about data security. Thank you so much for sharing the information about data security. We will see very soon or sometimes later, we'll get into some more information which is more related to entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial journey. And we appreciate your inputs. Thank you so much for that.